Today in Proverbs 25, and in a way you might say that we've ended the part of the book that Solomon wrote, although the rest of this is attributed to Solomon, at least a lot of this is. You look here in verse 1 of Proverbs 25, it says, "These are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied." So what these are various proverbs that are attributed to Solomon, which are not in the previous 24 chapters specifically, but they're ones that were put in there by an otherwise man's writers, which is Hezekiah. Hezekiah was another very wise king and good and righteous king. And so anyway, these are all psalms attributed to Solomon. And there's some very well recognized ones in this section. And anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at. And then you come to it'll be like this for the next few chapters. And then the very last two chapters, 30 and 31, are attributed to two other individuals. Chapter 30 is attributed to a man named Agur, son of Jakeh. And then chapter 31 is the words of King Lemuel. Who's King Lemuel? We have no idea. We don't know. But anyway, he is one that is there. And of course, Proverbs 31. If you're a lady and you've been to many at all, you've certainly been to a ladies' day in which Proverbs 31 was the theme of the day. It's the chapter on the virtuous wife. I think it's a good way to end the book because of all the things earlier on in the book about the adulterous woman and Solomon's comments about it's better to live in a desert or on a rooftop than with a contentious woman. I think Psalm 31 is a good way to balance some of that out and end the book about what a virtuous woman is supposed to look like. So anyway, I think it's good for that. So anyway, we're in 25 today, and 25 and 26, and of course, it won't be too long till we'll be done with the book. And then, like I mentioned to everybody last Sunday in my evening lesson, that we're going to go to John after this, go back to the New Testament and go through the Gospel of John. And take a good while with John is what we'll intend to do. I'm not going to do a chapter a week with John. A lot of those chapters are 60 and 70 verses long, and we're not going to even attempt that. Too much in there, and I want to weave in some other things, like some things out of 1 John and 2 John, and some of the history at the time and such. We'll weave that into the Gospel of John. Anyway, but we're not doing that today. 25, verse 1. These are the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Judah, copied. It is the glory of God to conceal things, but the glory of kings is to search things out. As the heavens for height and the earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable. Before we go on, let me go back to verse 2. It's the glory of God to conceal things. What is that?
God knows everything, and He's chosen certain things for us to know.
Yeah, God's chosen for us to know certain things. You know, the word that jumps out at me, of course, is not there, but what comes to mind is providence. That God works, but He doesn't always put flash a neon sign and say, look what I did. And many, many times throughout human history, only by looking backward can we say God had to have a hand in that. Because we don't see it in real time. And so it is very important that we notice that. And so, God is concealing things. Whereas kings, they search things out, want to bring those things out. Well, like our modern world, We have entire news channels dedicated to talking about the news. Not reporting the news, but talking about what it all means, trying to read the tea leaves or whatever and figure out things. And whereas God just works and doesn't necessarily reveal to us what He's done. In fact, a lot of times that is the case, that we don't know what God is doing. And so He is no less certain working, though, in that. Verse 3, what we just read, is the heavens for height, earth for depth, so the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and the smith is material for a vessel. Take away the wicked from the presence of the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Uses an illustration. You take away the dross off the silver, and you got something valuable that you can make a vessel with. You take away the evil from the king's court, and what you have left is good counsel. And so you take away that wicked, and the throne has righteousness. And so very often that's the case. You get rid of that bad influence, and it makes everything better. Verse 6, do not put yourself forward in the king's presence, or stand in the place of the great. For it is better to be told, come up here, than be put lower in the presence of a noble. Jesus said a few things along that lines, doesn't he? About, seeking the best seats and instead going to a lowly place, and then you get exalted instead of sitting at the best spot and being humbled if someone else has been invited that is greater. What your eyes have seen, do not hastily bring into court, for what will you do in the end when your neighbor puts you to shame? Argue your case with your neighbor himself, and do not reveal another's secret, lest he who hears you bring shame upon you, and your ill repute have no end. What he's saying is make sure of your story. Make sure of what you saw. Make sure of what is true. A lot of times people don't realize it, but eyewitness testimony is often the most unreliable testimony there is. Because people missee things, misremember things, blend things. Today, yes, eyewitness testimony makes a difference, but a lot of things are more valuable, like fingerprint evidence or DNA or whatever. But when you do make a case, whereas they had to rely on eyewitness testimony, that's why 2 or 3 witnesses were necessary. And make sure you saw what you saw. So many times things are misunderstood, and you only see a very small snapshot of what was reality. I use this illustration many times. The church parsonage in North Carolina was on a busy road. And, I would get trash in the front yard, and every now and then there'd be a big beer can. And so you would, on occasion, if you drove by, would see me with an open can of beer in my front yard. And if you came by and saw that snapshot, you would have a different understanding than what the reality was. So you gotta recognize, is it true that I have an open can of beer in my front yard? Yep. That is true. And if you took a picture of that, that'd be exactly what it would be. And it would be one of those things, like, oh, looky here. And that'd be true, but, wasn't mine, and it was thrown there or flew out of the back of somebody's pickup truck or whatever, or the State Highway Patrol had a barracks right up around the street. Might have been, out of their windows, but anyway.
That's the reason you throw all your beer cans over your neighbor's yard.
Right. Or plant your marijuana on somebody else's property. Yeah, that's for sure. I learned that back years ago, finding things out, berry picking and other things, that the place to grow your marijuana is on coal company land or the DNR. You don't put it on your property, because they can confiscate that. You put it on, they're not going to confiscate Consol's property because they find marijuana on it. because they'll know it's not Consol growing it. You know, it's somebody else growing it on their property. And they're not going to take the state land away from the state because they find it. So anyway. So now you know, Randy, now you know where to plant your marijuana. Plant on somebody else's land. Go up to further up Straight Run, put it on Kevin's place. But anyway.
Kevin's growing his own up there.
Kevin's got his own, okay. Yeah. All right. Let's not digress too far. Let's get back into the study. Verse 11, one of the most recognizable Psalms, and certainly a very good one. A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in the setting of silver. I would contend that the greatest divider of men, women too, but the greatest divider of people is the words they use. If you can say the right words the right time, you can be anything. You say the wrong words at the wrong time, you get yourself killed in a hurry. But really, if you say the right words at the right time with the right thoughts, then you can really do anything. So a word fitly spoken, the most beautiful and powerful and wonderful thing that there is. And certainly that's the case. Verse 12, like a gold ring or an ornament of gold is a wise reprover to a listening ear. Like the cold of snow in the time of harvest is the faithful messenger to those who send him. He refreshes the soul of his masters. That verse, you know, the cold, that crispness that comes right about the middle of October. And, you know, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of who's waiting for that. You know, that coolness in the air in which, you know, it's time for, you know, wood smoke and apple pie and pumpkin pie and the harvest and that. What a refreshing thing it is to get those cool evenings and mornings at that early October point after a long summer. And, you know, he's saying what a refreshing thing that is at the time of harvest that just brings everything as far as the heat of the summer to an end. And also it's an instant gratification. That frost, whatever you've worked hard to do through the year to get ready, you get a reminder of why you've been preparing. Because the cold and the winter's coming up. And those things aren't going to grow any longer. And so you get a reminder of why you've done all that. Verse 14, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. Another pretty famous proverb. You know, clouds and wind and no rain. Really not much of anything, is it? Especially when you need to rain. We've had a couple of days like that not long ago. It was predicted to have rain and we needed it. And all it did was just get cloudy and windy. And just kind of like, okay, we got teased. And it didn't lower the temperature, didn't provide the rain that we needed. And that's kind of the way it is. Verse 15, with patience a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. You're saying things in a good way, saying things can accomplish a lot, more so than sometimes anger and yelling and what have you. Verse 16, if you found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit it. Too much of a good thing stops at some point of being a good thing. You can make yourself sick on just about anything if you eat a little too much of it. And, you know, so there's a good lesson there. Verse 17, let your foot be seldom in your neighbor's house, lest he has his fill of you and hate you. You know, think about that one. You know, your neighbor may not like you so well when you hang around a good bit.
Wear out your welcome.
Wear out your welcome. Yeah, exactly. And so, really, really good friends are those people that you do hang out like that and you don't wear out your welcome. Those are the people that are really special. So be careful of that. Verse 18, a man who bears false witness against his neighbor is like a war club or a sword or a sharp arrow. Bearing a false witness, lie, whatever, that essentially is being stabbed in the back. It's what our phrase is, of stabbing somebody in the back. Very much that. Somebody that lies about their neighbor or whatever. It's like getting clubbed or sworded or a sharp arrow. Trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips. Whoever sings psalms to a heavy heart is like one who takes off a garment on a cold day, and like vinegar on soda. That's interesting, isn't it? You sing songs to a heavy heart. You're being kind and such, but it is being a blessing to them, and you can take it a few different ways. What I would see with that is you kind of taking your coat off of you on a cold day and putting on somebody else, and you're blessing them. Even though it's not easy to do that, you're blessing them in the middle of that. Here is something in verse 21 that you recognize from Romans 12. If your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. For you will heap burning coals on his head, and the Lord will reward you. So that concept in Romans 12 is not entirely a New Testament concept. It was there in the Old. The north wind brings forth rain, a backbiting tongue, angry looks. Back to those couple of verses there, 21 and 22. He says, if your enemy, not just your neighbor, we think about Jesus adding to the old law. In some ways he did that, but also he revealed what the old law intended. Many of the things, including the golden rule, many of those things like this, were already there. He says, if your enemy is hungry, give him something to eat. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. You do this to your enemy, not only your friend, your neighbor, your loved one, but you do that to your enemy. Why? So that you can cause them to change. You can act upon their conscience. You can enact in some way, a way that will cause them to repent or whatever. And you do that because it's the right thing to do. And so, in a lot of ways, Jesus is simply revealing the intention of the Old Testament that they had missed. They had picked so many times at the minutiae and left the really important parts of the old law, and that was to do these kind of things. Being good to everybody. They had said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Well, that's not what the Old Testament said. The Old Testament said this, and so they needed to do it. Verse 23, the north wind brings forth rain, and a backbiting tongue, angry looks. It is better to live on a corner of a housetop than a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. Like cold water to a thirsty soul, so is good news from a far country. Like a muddied spring or a polluted fountain is a righteous man who gives way before the wicked. It is not good to eat too much honey, nor is it glorious to seek one's own glory. A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. A few things there that he's mentioned earlier in the book about being on the corner of a housetop and sharing with a quarrelsome wife. He also points out that cold water to a thirsty soul is like good news from a far country. Certainly what a good blessing that is to come about. And he mentions about, in verse 28, that a man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. There's no protection, there's no structure around it or anything like that. It can be totally compromised in a way that if someone has no self-control, they can be destroyed. What's that? No, certainly not. No, certainly not. Someone without that self-control would not be easy to be with or be around at all either. For sure.
And I find it interesting to look at how many times the Bible, and we understand, I'm getting to understand more and more the older I get, it talks about the example, the importance of the example as opposed to a verbal telling someone how to do it. The Bible talks about that example, that stresses the importance of that example. So many, feels like I feel like hundreds of times more than it does talk about verbal, exchange.
Right.
It talks about controlling your tongue. So many different cases of the example, like you talk about, the example is everything. It's what's going to get, we can go around and involve with the other. I have been more times than most people, of trying to tell somebody your opinion. But the best way to do it, by the Bible standards, is the example of how you handle it. Not say, well, this is how you do it. If you do it that way, then
Right.
that really seems to sink in. Talked about it multiple times in this chapter.
Yeah, what Jim mentions is that the power of an example, that the Bible emphasizes showing an example of things more so than telling people of what to do. Even though in a way, the Proverbs are Solomon telling people what to do, but it's all about using an example to do that.
Acting on it as opposed to,
Yeah.
in scripture terms, this is them relaying to us, but we're
Yeah.
going to carry it out.
We need to act upon it, certainly. And Andy, of course, quotes the verses he quotes at the beginning of every sermon. And the one he always quotes is, Joshua 24, that as for me and my house will serve the Lord. And that is, what Joshua says there to the people of Israel is an awesome example of just that. All you do whatever you want. You can follow the gods of the Amorites, or you can follow the gods of the land you dwell in. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Y'all can do whatever you want. Doesn't matter. But here's what we're going to do in my house. And that is exactly it. And Joshua said, you do whatever you want. We're going to do this. And that is exactly it. And by that example of Joshua saying that, all the people of that generation did the same thing. Now, the next generation, not so good, but that generation did. And largely because Joshua made an example of what he was going to do. So here's what I'm going to do. And it works. It's a very, very powerful thing. We did a lot with the youth in North Carolina where I preached. And we didn't have a youth minister or anything, so I did a lot of that. Our kids were coming along in later years of elementary school, and so I kind of sat down with the elders, and they gave me the green light to do this. So I sat down with all the parents and said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to these trips on these dates and these dates and these dates, and we're going to do this stuff, and all of you can come with us if you want, but we're going whether you want to go or not. Well, they all piled in, and we were a congregation smaller than Barrettville. Would have a normal attendance of about 80, but we would take 30 and 40 to youth group trips. We'd go to weekend youth rallies or whatever. And they said, man, a lot of people would say, you must have a big congregation. No, we got about 80. You mean you got 30 here, but you only have 8? Yeah, because we had almost 100% attendance because of that. And nothing to credit what I did, just simply I followed the Bible example of, hey, we're going to do this, and we want you to come too. And really, in a lot of ways, that's kind of the important thing. You want to tell your friends and neighbors what they need to do? knock on the door and say, hey, here's what you need to do. How's that going to get received? Not very well. Most of us are not going to receive it. I'm not going to receive that well. But if you say, here's where we're going, here's what's going on, I'd like you to come and join us. Go with us. People are more likely to step up and say, yeah, that sounds good. I might go along with that a little bit too and see. And so that very much is a way of looking at that. And an example does that. Here's what I'm going to do, and I'd like you to come with me. And that has a lot better chance than just kind of being preaching and saying, here's what you need to do. Because we don't accept that very well.
That goes along with treating your enemy if they need help, not just your neighbor, you help your enemy.
Yeah.
That's where we have to be set apart from the world. It's easy to help people who are kind and who appreciate what you do, but where we have to be different and where people notice you're different, is helping those who maybe don't deserve it. That doesn't keep you from doing the right thing.
Yeah, their lack of deserving doesn't change your mandate to do what God's told you to do. And so, and be thankful also that God doesn't bless us according to what we deserve either. So, be thankful for that. All right, chapter 26. Like snow in summer or rain in harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. Snow on the 4th of July fits in about as well as honor for a fool. It just doesn't fit. Doesn't fit at all. And, so. Verse 2, like a sparrow in its flitting, like a swallow in its flying, a curse that is causeless does not alight. You say all kinds of curses or whatever, but it doesn't stick on anything. It doesn't land on anything if it's causeless. A whip for a horse, a bridle for a donkey, a rod for the back of fools. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. Say what? Verse 4 says, don't answer a fool according to his folly. And verse 5 says, answer a fool according to his folly. Now what? You got two verses that are exact opposite of each other? Okay. What do you do with that?
You got two different situations.
Two different situations? Yeah. This, Ted, is a great example of why I said in the very beginning that the Proverbs are not truth for all circumstances, that they're often a truth for a certain set of circumstances. And you're exactly right. It's two different circumstances. There is a time when you're wasting your breath to say anything to a fool. And then there are times that you might as well just say something to them and appease them and go on. Give them an answer and go on. And so, that is what it is like. You don't answer a fool according to his folly unless you'll be like him yourself. And a lot of times arguments, like say on social media, I read stuff and I'm like, oh, that's so far off, but I am not about to wade into that argument because you're wasting your time with whoever it is that's there. Like, I'm not willing to exert enough brain cells to make this argument to them because I know how it's going to get twisted, and they're not going to. I'm just not going to wade out into that because they're baiting you. And so it's best just to be wise enough not to say anything in that kind of circumstance. And so. And then also, sometimes it's best not to say anything because you're giving credibility to what they said. He says, don't answer a fool according to his folly. because he'll be wise in his own eyes. He'll think just because other people give him credibility that he's got something wise. See, that's one of the dynamics of the internet. You know, every village had an idiot. It's been that way from the beginning of time. Now, they all get on the internet, and you've got this one dumb idea. And you Google that dumb idea, and every village idiot has posted their spin on that dumb idea. And now you've taken 1,000 village idiots from 1,000 different villages, and now they're a group of 1,000. And now they say, look at all these people that agree with me. Well, no, it's just simply the village idiot have all found each other. They're all connected on Facebook together. It's never been, it's not, the idea isn't any brighter. They're still a village idiot. But because they've all found each other on the internet.
Now you have a village of idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And village idiots don't practice what they preach.
No.
When I look at this, and because I know of one such idiot, and then when I pointed out, but you're doing.
You shouldn't say that about your husband, okay?
When I pointed out to them that I didn't name them, but I pointed out that what you're arguing is incorrect because this is what you have. Knowing good and well that they were the ones who did that, I never heard from them again.
Yeah. So, yeah, you could, yeah, you want to.
I didn't blame them.
You didn't blame them in that situation, but when you said that, you realize, then you find out later they're the
So I
ones that.
answered them and according to their own findings.
Right, you did
you know,
that.
It's like, okay, you're stating this, but
Yeah.
that's not what you practice.
Yeah,
And when
you-
I gave the example, it's like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, you provided a little bit of sense to the situation, and you didn't hear back from them as a result. That happens. Okay, verse 6. Whoever sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. You know, a message is only as good as the messenger. You know, there are some people I don't want representing me. I don't care how good their intentions are. I don't want them representing me. Because I just know it's going to end badly. I don't want them. That's okay. I'll speak for myself. You know, and so, you know, I don't want them because if you choose a fool to deliver your message, you're going to get what you deserve. You have ruined yourself. You've cut your own feet off, and you end up drinking violence. You're going to make a mess of it. You want a wise individual that delivers a message to you. It's why it's so important that ambassadors and diplomats have diplomacy, because that's what they're doing. They are making messages. You don't want a hothead being the ambassador to China or the ambassador to Russia, somebody that's spurring for a fight. You don't want that kind of person sitting down with the leaders of those countries looking for a fight. You want somebody that has mind of what is at stake if we unnecessarily ratcheted up a fight, because there could be huge implications of that. You don't want somebody in that role. You don't want a fool delivering those messages. You want them clear and true and concise, but you don't want somebody that's going to mess you up. Tom?
We sent Dennis Rodman to North Korea, so.
I don't know that we sent Dennis Rodman to North
Yeah.
Korea.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, how'd that all turn out? Anyway. Yeah.
They said it turned out pretty good, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Better than what Tom just said? The bar's not high. You know.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
It does. Anyway, yeah. All right, verse 11, like a lame man's legs which hang useless is a proverb in the mouth of fools. A proverb in the mouth of fools, useless. Like one who binds a stone in a sling is one who gives honor to a fool. Like a thorn. Well, binding the the stone in the sling, you don't attach the stone in the sling. You want it to be free. When you let it go, it's like tying a rope to what you're throwing. You don't want to do that. You want to unbind it so that it can come out of the sling. Verse 9, like a thorn goes up in the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like an archer who wounds everyone is one who hires a passing fool or drunkard. All they do is wound. All they do is cause wounds and not doing what they should. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Some people you can teach, some people you can't. And he says, like a dog coming back to his vomit. Not a pretty picture. Verse 12, do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more than for a fool than for him. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. There's a lion in the streets. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. What an image. Like a door on his hinges, a sluggard on his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish and wears him out to bring it back to his mouth. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can answer sensibly. Whoever meddles in a quarrel not his own is like one who takes a passing dog by the ears. Why would you go out into a quarrel not your own, make a mess of it? Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I'm only joking. Looking for problems and starting a fight. For a lack of wood, the fire goes out. Where there is no whisper, quarreling ceases. Boy, that's a good one. Where there's no wood, the fire goes out. Well, one person escalates, and that next person escalates, and then it gets worse until you've made a mountain out of a molehill. And to use that illustration, you take away the fuel, and the fire goes out. So you keep from adding to a situation, it goes away. So it does not go out as long as you keep putting wood on the fire. So we should be very careful of that, to not do that. I can't stop people from shooting at me. You really can't. But I can keep from handing them ammunition and adding fuel to it. I can do that. And so that's very much what we're looking at there. As charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome man for kindling strife. The words of whisper are like delicious morsels that go down into the inner parts of the body. Like the glaze covering of an earthen vessel are fervent lips with an evil heart. Whoever hates disguises himself with his lips and harbors deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, believe him not. For there are 7 abominations in his heart, though his hatred be covered with deception. His wickedness will be exposed in the assembly. Whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and a stone will come back on him who starts it rolling. A lying tongue hates its victims, and a flattering mouth ruins works. We can, as this sets out, the words that we say can destroy us. Gossip, those go down into the inner person, and people ingest that. The one that speaks graciously, is good. You have the juxtaposition of good speech versus bad, and the good that's caused from good things, the bad, the collateral damage that's caused from bad, and all of that is shown in these things that happen there, and very much it's that way. It reminds us back to what we looked at in the beginning of today, of a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in settings of silver. What a beautiful, precious thing it is to say the right words at the right time. So we've got to be very careful of our words. And so, anyway, chapters 27 and 28 next week. We only have 3 more weeks. 27, 28, 29, 30, and then 31.